Friends, over the years, you and I have driven all sorts of things. We've driven fast cars, we've driven slow cars, we recently drove our first station wagon, we've driven a military prototype vehicle, hell, we even piloted the Goodyear blimp once. But there's one kind of car we've never driven in all of our 7 years, and that would be a car you're not supposed to drive, a limousine. But we're not going to drive just any limousine. We're going to drive one that's more rare than most of those super-duper hyper cars that come from places like Maranello, Woking, and Stuttgart. So for those of you that watched our Bentley Mulsanne Speed episode, yes, we are shooting this on the same day, and yes, it is still raining. Perhaps even harder. So with that, let's press on to the engine. So in the long wheelbase version of the Mulsanne, you can get any engine you want as long as it is the 6.75 liter, 505 horsepower twin turbo V8. And this version puts out 752 pound-feet of torque. Now, there are two interesting things going on here. Number one, this specific engine was hand-built by Graham Noden, so thank you, Graham. I'll make sure that Sean sends you thank yous. And number two, interesting, this is a limousine, people. Like, if you run a hedge fund, you are a head of state, or you're just like a general robber baron, this is your car, man. But the engine actually has cylinder deactivation, so better fuel efficiency for a limousine. So, the only thing we can do now is take it out and see how it works on the road. Okay, right from the top, I completely appreciate the irony of our current situation. Trying to unpack pulling power in a car meant to be a limousine. But when else are we going to have the opportunity? So with that, what did we say, 500 horsepower? Well, we didn't say, well, it's over 3.5 tons. So with that, let's put our foot into it. Yeah, it's, I would say quick. There's quite a bit of heft here, and let's slow down here because we don't want to meet the pullet's eye or give the car back in 2 pieces, but there is plenty of pulling power here. Not really a surprise, being that we've driven other Mulsannes before, and let's just say 700 pounds of pulling power, or 752 in this case. I think Jeeves will be happy. So I believe we are graduating from spinning to what they call pissing down. But did I mention that you can have a custom umbrella fitted to your Mulsanne? So with that, let's press on to driving dynamics. Now, we covered a lot of the changes in the Mulsanne Speed episode, so I am not going to cover them again here. Not because I don't want to go through like the bushings and the air ride suspension changes. I don't want to be here in the rain talking too much. So what we do need to focus on is the length, because that's kind of like the reason for being of this car. It is an extra 250 millimeters in length here. It's all in this rear door. So what the engineers have done is they've extended the wheelbase here to here. So that rear axle is way far back, and then you have a much longer car, which gives you a different presence here. Now, that's great in terms of the way it looks and going down the road, but how does it drive? Yes, the irony continues when we get into driving dynamics, but in this case, this is more about numbers, specifically weight and length. We already covered the weight, over 3.5 tons, but again, this is a limousine. But then there's that dimension change, meaning we've pushed the axle so much farther back. It's all in the rear door back there. So with that, we've got a nice little, I don't want to say a super tight road, but we got a couple of nice bends, so let's put our foot into it here. See what the composure is. Now remember, in the Bentley Mulsanne and Mulsanne Speed episode, we talked about the bushing changes and the active engine mounts and what they did there to make it a more flexible, more compliant ride. Here, there's virtually, like, this more floats. This is a more relaxed ride than the regular wheelbase car, but surprisingly compliant when you consider the extra length in the rear. And actually, there isn't a huge weight difference between the two, because this one, yes, you get a longer door and a longer wheelbase, but you don't have a third middle seat, so they kind of cancel each other out just a bit. Now, before we press on to the business end of this thing, let's just try sport mode, because when else are we gonna do that? Here we go, put our foot into it. Less floaty. Let's call it a dynamic, understated gentleman driver's limousine. Yeah, I think that's what we're going to call it. So good news, it sort of stopped raining and we have some sun. So a perfect opportunity to talk about the sunroof. So there are two things going on here. Number one, it is moved from here to here. And this is only on offer in the extended wheelbase, but the actual panel itself and some of the fittings, they are the same that come from the Mulsanne Speed. It's just focused on the rear passengers. And the second thing is a bit of a story. Like, do you guys remember when we shot the 2016 Continental back in Norway? We stopped and crew on the way to Norway and we shot a coming mini-series of the show of me building a Bentley. I'm very excited to share this with you. But as we were getting a tour through the whole facility, specifically the Bentley Mulsanne body shop, we were walking around and we saw this very odd roof where the sunroof was in the wrong place. So I tell my tour guide, what's going on there? And he goes, well, we're not going to talk about that. So, two things. This is a cool sunroof, and number two, I can keep a secret. And finally, the business end of things, but where shall we start? I know, let's start with the bits that carried over from the Speed. So remember we talked about what Brett and his team did for the diamond quilting. Basically, they changed the orientation of it, and then they also made it tighter. That carries over here, nice touch. And then they also changed all the seats in all Mulsannes. But here, another change because you've got this like Lufthansa first class kind of deal back here. And it's not just the seat, it's the seat and the headrest with this pillow here and a pillow here. And then, like all Mulsannes, you can adjust the back seat, but this one gives you the full-on recline. You could put the seat farther forward. You got that extra 250 mils here. And then it's got a footrest that comes up here. And you know what? While we're having this discussion, I am going to have a massage. Then let's put that off to the side. But then we can't forget the picnic table thing here. And this, I mean, it's finished almost as beautifully as the rest of the car. You got the silver plating here and the leather finish here. Oh, and just as like a fun fact here while we're putting this thing away, you know I'm an av geek and how I post all those pictures of airplanes when I fly places. And if you don't follow me on Instagram, you should, because you'll see some very cool aviation pictures. Speaking of aviation, this armrest is not just an armrest. It is the only portion of the car that features aviation grade aluminum, and that's because of the weight that it bears based on like someone leaning on it in different places. This whole hinge here is aviation grade aluminum. And then there's one of my favorite party tricks here, and that's the curtains. Like in the regular Mulsanne, this is mesh, but here you have real curtains, and it's here as well as here, and this is what divides you from the unwashed masses when you're trying to like take over companies or have a private moment with your best gal. But you know, let's open it up and let's be open to all the people. And then there is another trick here that is actually pretty slick, and this is again new to all Mulsannes, and that is a tablet back here. But the tablet, like, look, I can't get it and touch it over there, so you can actually take the tablet off, and you can use this as a real live, like, Android tablet, both in your Bentley as well as taking this thing home. Granted, it's the only tablet you'll ever have that probably will say Bentley on it. Interesting tidbit that this will work in the same environment as the front of the car that has Apple CarPlay, but I digress. And then last but certainly not least, you have wireless headphones. Let's put the pillow over there. You've got wireless headphones back here for the TV system, which in Europe you can actually have regular over-the-air television. US not on offer for many reasons, mainly because of lawyers. And then let's say for the sake of discussion you needed to charge these things. You have your wired cables to keep this thing charged, and you have some USB ports here. So with that, I think I'm going to charge my headphones here, because rather than flying back to Frankfurt to catch my intercontinental flight back to Los Angeles, I believe I will have Jez here drive me back up there and maybe catch up on some movies along the way. With that, I will say, bis später. So in summary, what do we got? Well, number one, it finally stopped raining. We even had a little bit of magic hour left over there. And number two, this has been a fantastic opportunity to drive what is going to be an incredibly rare car. In talking with Sam, who is the product manager of the entire Mulsanne lineup, he was intimating that this is going to be about 300 total units worldwide production, and for the US, something like 25, and that's it. So this has been a somewhat fun, but also somewhat serious look at a car that is meant for people that ride back here, but how does it drive and how is it built? So with that, I want to turn this around to you guys and leave you with a question. But the question isn't, would you choose this or that? Because really, there's nothing else to choose. The question is, how would you configure your Mulsanne extended wheelbase vehicle? And it's not just, I want one in black or I want one in two-tone, but how would you have it fitted? Like, would you do two-tone? Would you do a single tone? Would you do the speed wheels? Would you do a different type of interior? Would you do, well, you get my point. Let me know in the comments below, or via our social media, MotoManTV all one word, MotoManTV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I want to leave you with two things. Number one, make sure you download our fancy new mobile application, which you can download for free at Apple iTunes or Google Play. And number two, I want to leave you with a fun fact. Now, in reality, a car like this is meant for heads of state, and Bentley actually did provide Queen Elizabeth with the state limousine on her 50th anniversary of her reign in 2002. So this has direct lineage to the Queen of England. So a little fun fact about the Queen herself. She's a car guy. And I have a fact to back this up. Back before she was the queen, back when she was the princess, she volunteered for the war effort, and the job she had was a mechanic of 3/4-ton trucks. And she didn't just fix them, she actually drove them. So the Queen of England can not only fix one of these, she can drive a manual. And with that, until I see you next time, hopefully with better weather, bis später.